Hello YouTube and welcome to the show. It's the Frog Queen here, today with a very special guest. Today I'm going to be talking to Jason Latour. For those of you who might not be familiar, Jason is an American comic book artist and writer whose work has been published by Dark Horse, Marvel, Image Comics, and more. You've seen his name attached to such titles as Sculpt, Wolverine, BPRD, The Winter Soldier, and most recently Spider Gwen. As of just this year, his ongoing Image Comics series Southern Bastards won an Eisner for Best Continuing Series. So without further ado from me, here's Jason Latour.
So yeah, I think I'll just dive right in. The first thing I want to say is congratulations on your Eisner winner.
Thank you. A pretty surreal little moment, yeah. You know, do you want me to expound on that?
Well, what happened? I mean, I only got to see pictures. I got to see you shake some hands and some photos. It was for the best.
I embarrassed myself pretty good.
What's that?
I embarrassed myself pretty well.
Oh, why? What happened?
I'm just kidding. It was a really surreal night. Because I think, like everybody else, awards. Your mileage may vary when it comes to awards, right? So a lot of times when you're actually nominated for something, you kind of prepare yourself to lose.
Oh.
because it doesn't really... It's validating if you win, but I think it's validation enough that somebody says, hey, you did a pretty decent job, right? And we all know, from sitting on the outside and, looking at award nominations, that there's plenty of times when you're like, oh, that guy shouldn't have got nominated, or that person shouldn't have won. That's what the whole Oscar season is about, is people saying, oh, that movie's terrible. How did that win? So, you take it with a grain of salt when you're actually nominated for something. But that said, I've worked a long time, so it was a really neat honor. And I think that the genuine emotion that came out of me surprised even me. Well, the best thing was that Jason Aaron won. The best thing was that I presented and I told jokes and I didn't bomb completely. And then the next best thing was that Jason Aaron won Best Writer. And my reaction to that was maybe I'm not a human piece of garbage, because I actually was very happy for him. So much so that I grabbed him and started shaking him and stuff. And we would won the Super Bowl. And then I realized oh, his wife is next to him. I should maybe let his life partner have a moment with him.
Oh,
yeah.
That's adorable though.
Yeah. And then when we won, I may have went a little overboard with my celebration, but it was. I think it was coming from a genuine place, and it was nice to surprise. To feel surprised by your reaction to something, because it does matter to me, what I do with my life and my time, and it wouldn't change whether or not there was a trophy. But at the end of the day, it's cool to get a trophy. I played sports growing up. Trophies are cool.
Yeah. So they don't tell you anything ahead of time, right? It's just a total surprise, or do people...
No.
There's nothing ahead of time?
No, they don't tell you anything.
Oh, so it's just you lost. You could feel like dirt in that moment, or you feel $100 in that moment,
I don't feel like anybody feels like dirt.
I probably would. Because I hate losing, but...
Well, we lost last year, and
I
we lost
remember.
to Saga.
Well,
and that was fine. It's Saga.
Yeah. I think losing to Saga is okay.
Sure. I mean, there's that old saying that second place is the first loser, and that's garbage. It's not a competition. It's validating, and you can use it in ways that bring attention to your work, and that's really the biggest get from it. And I think obviously, like, acclaim and money are nice, but, you know, I don't think many people get into comic books for either one of those things. Maybe we get into it because we're a little bit of egotistical or control freaks or have some sort of obsessive compulsion disorder on some level. But I think that if you're lucky, you know, you find a way to allow those things to have a platform that becomes healthy, where you get this stuff out and you tell stories and, you know.
I think that any writer or creator of anything is going to be a little bit egotistical and have control issues. I think that just goes with the creator territory. But...
Yeah. I used to think pretension was a bad word. And,
yeah.
You know, I mean, and it can be, but I think like just saying, hey, everybody listen to what I got to say, or this little story I got to tell, is in itself a little pretentious. And the sooner you make peace with that, the sooner you can make peace with yourself. And then, like, you know, this got really like self-helpy.
Yeah, we're getting deep in. Well, let's go lighter then. How did you get started in comics? I don't think I ever asked you that. I mean, I know that I've interviewed you before on my blog, but I think we purely talked about Spider Gwen. I don't think we ever talked about, you know, what got you really into comics in the first place.
It's funny because I figured out what my canned answer is. No, I have a very long story, but I figured out how to condense it. I was asked that at San Diego, and I said, more or less, I figured out very early that I was a egomaniac, and I had all the stuff I wanted to say, and people were like tuning me out. And I liked cartoons and comic books from a very young age, and I figured out that when I drew, people gave me attention because I could do it a little bit better than your average person, and I just followed it to its natural conclusion. Otherwise, I'd be, you know, I would have a real job, which I would be very ill prepared for. I started making comic books when I was a little kid. I was lucky enough that, you know, my parents and my family supported that, you know, endeavor. And I had a local comic shop, which is Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, which runs Heroes Con, and they, you know, were this like really small, both that shop and that convention were this amazing sort of oasis, creative oasis and resource growing up, because it's a very art-driven convention, and not just art, but creator-driven convention. And from a very young age, I started going around I would go to the convention, and it was like my art school for like 2 days every year. You know, you add it up from age 12 to age 20, and it's like a semester of art school. But yeah, I would take my little portfolio around Heroes Con and get every artist and creator in the building that would talk to me to actually look at it. And I just got very used to the feedback, and I tried to, you know, take that home with me and apply it to making comics. And then, you know, college rolled around, and I went to a regular sort of beer drinking college and sort of got out of it for a while. And, you know, around the time to graduate, I started writing and drawing a comic strip for the newspaper. And then I graduated school and didn't have a plan. Ended up driving a truck for my dad.
Oh.
And, and at the end of the day, I would still come home and do comics. And so I just sort of knew in the back of my head that I wanted to do that. And so the long-winded story is I had some sort of I guess you could call them light legal problems and all kinds of stuff that sort of grounded me and made me move home after I'd gone out into the workforce for a while. And it's one of the reasons why San Diego was so surreal, is because that was my first big convention where I went looking for work. And the first week there, I had this girlfriend who I was living at home at the time, when I met her, she was about to become a real estate agent, and she was basically in this point in her life where she was like, "I'm cutting the fat. Like if you're not serious about like something, then you're out of my life." And I took it to heart, like I was already leaning that way, but it was sort of the last little nudge I needed. And so I flew out to San Diego with like $40 in my pocket. I slept in a park, and I slept in a hotel lobby, and did all this sort of crazy stuff. And San Diego was a different place back then. It was about 1/5 or 1/10 of the size it is now, but it was still a very big convention. And I had a very successful weekend. I walked around all weekend and met a lot of people. I met Will Eisner that weekend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got invited to like a Marvel party, which was a big sort of like networking thing for me. But at the end of the weekend, it felt like nothing was going to come of it. And as I was standing at the Image booth of all places, I saw Matt Groening, that created The Simpsons, like walk by. And as he walked by, I ran him down and sort of like grabbed him and showed him this comic strip collection I did. And I didn't know he was going to the bathroom. And he stood there and did a pee-pee dance and talked to me for like 20 minutes. It was like very gracious and kind with his time. And at the end of it, he saw this color sample on the back of my book and said, "Take this over to Bongo Comics and tell them I said to hire you and leave your name and number." And I thought he was just being nice. So I went over and I dropped it off. A couple days later, I got a call. I said yes to coloring some Simpsons comics, even though I didn't know how to color. And it just sort of got the ball rolling, I moved to New York. I colored comics for a while under a pseudonym. Ended up going into Vertigo, getting work there. One thing led to another. Before you know it, I kept writing, and I had 2 different careers. So full circle is at the night of the Eisners, I'm standing in line because I was about to present, and I'm standing in line at the bar, and this guy's waiting to get his drink made, and he turns to me and says, like, "What do you do for a living?" And I'm like, "I'm a comic book artist." And he says, "Oh, I'm just here with my boss, Matt Groening." And I was like, wow, that's a really surreal thing to hear, like, tonight. And I said, well, tell him I said congratulations. And so he won a Lifetime Achievement Award that night.
Wow.
And at the end, they take this big photo. And they took a photo of us all. And I saw him, like, walking off. And I ran over and, like, grabbed him and told him the story, like, super fast. And he didn't remember, obviously, because why would he? But we took this, like, great, like, selfie, like me and him laughing about it. Yeah, so it was really, that's another reason why that night was so kind of crazy. So it only took 39 years, but that's I got in common.
That's awesome, though. That's an awesome story. I mean, who really is like, hey, yeah, so I ran into Matt Groening.
Yeah, well,
and then I got into comics.
Yeah, well, I think it does show you that it's a much smaller pond than people realize. I think all creative stuff is a lot smaller than people realize. And some of, as much as it is sort of like working your ass off and staying committed to it, which it is. I mean, that's the largest component of it. But, there's also luck, and then there's also putting yourself in a position to be lucky. So pursuing... making educated, like, guesses as to where you should be and when you should be there. And, I would be the first person to tell you I'm very, very lucky.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what are you doing with your luck these days? Can you tell my audience?
I am the writer on Spider Gwen.
Which I know.
What?
Which I know, but...
Yeah. Well, I co-created that with Robbie Rodriguez, and we do that at Marvel every month, and it's a alternate take on the spider mythos, where Gwen Stacy's bitten by the spider instead of Peter Parker, and Gwen Stacy's father is a captain of the New York City Police Department and ends up chasing Spider-Woman, who is Spider-Gwen's name within the book. Spider-Gwen's just a nickname that's stuck. It's just very easy. There was already a Spider-Woman character, and it's an easy way to identify her. So I write that every month, and I also co-created and draw and occasionally write issues of Southern Bastards, which is the book that we won the Eisner for, which is sort of like Friday Night Lights meets The Godfather. It's about a evil football coach in a small town, and evil is in quotation marks. Morally gray, if not kind of a bastard, who runs a football team in a small Alabama county, and it's about sort of an exploration of power and toxic masculinity and small town stuff, and yeah, it's a pretty fun book.
That's awesome. So, how many issues are you in? I mean, I know Spider Gwen this is the second, it was the relaunch of the series because it was the first run. Right. And then the Marvel Universe did its reboot, and then she came back and started over at number 1 again. And I don't remember what number Southern Bastards is actually on anymore.
There's 18 total issues of Spider Gwen right now.
Okay.
That I've written. I think number 10 is out, so that would be, there's 16 out. And then there's an annual. There's, because she appeared in a one-shot, it's called Edge of Spider-Verse number 2, they put that back out as Spider-Gwen 0. And so there's issue 0 through 5, which is the first run, and then we relaunched it as second volume. That's called volume 0. And then there's a volume 1. I don't know why they number things this way. That's volume 1.
This is a Marvel thing.
It's the current run. And we're on issue 10, and that just came out. Southern Bastards, we've put out 14 issues.
Wow.
And we are on a hiatus until November, so we'll be back right in the middle of football season.
It's so funny. I was talking with Adam McGovern earlier, a couple days ago, for my very first interview for my channel. We were talking a lot about football, incidentally, but mostly how I wanted to abolish football. And
well, that's what I think is an interesting thing about this book.
Okay.
Is that it's not necessarily a pro-football book. I mean, Jason and I love football,
right.
And I played in high school, but one of the most gratifying things about this comic has been the reaction of people who, like yourself, seem to have no interest, if not active disdain for it. Those are always my favorite reactions. I have the strangest line in comics, because at the beginning I would have Spider-Gwen cosplayers with Spider-Gwen issues, and I would have big burly guys with Southern Bastards issues. And as time has progressed, like over the years, last couple of years, now I can't tell who's going to have what. And that's like the best thing that's ever happened, is having cute teenage girls in their Spider-Gwen costumes with their big Southern Bastards trades. Like, it's the craziest. On some level, I think you get into comics to be subversive.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I'm in it for, there's a lot of sort of things I'm trying to reinforce, I guess, with the superhero stuff. But there's also a subversive nature to all of it, and I couldn't have designed a more subversive angle on things.
What I wanted to ask you, what sort of comics were you hoping to create in the future? Do you have a stockpile of stories in your head that you really want to get out, or draw, or any particular thing like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very committed to doing creator-owned stuff. I'm always going to do more or less my stories. The stories that I tell with my collaborators that we own. And that's really just mostly out of creative freedom. I have me and Ivan Brandon and Greg Hinkle and Matt Wilson have a new Image comic that's going to start probably in the winter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Black Cloud.
Okay.
And it's sort of a detective story about a girl from another dimension.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the elevator pitch is always Jessica Jones meets Roger Rabbit.
I was just gonna say, sounds like we're going some Jessica Jones way or something. I mean, that stuff's big right now, you know, girl detective.
Yeah, and I have another image thing that I can't talk about yet, but Marvel I've been in a very fortunate position in Marvel with the Spider Gwen stuff and Earth 65, so to speak, which is its own universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to ideally explore that a little bit more. Maybe spin some stuff off eventually, or try some new things. I like working on the Spider books. It's very interesting because I loved Spider-Man as a kid, and I sort of had become detached from that feeling over time, and now re-exploring it, it's like that just basic sort of great power, great responsibility theme is just, I don't know, I feel like you could write a story about that every day for the rest of your life. And so at Marvel, there's projects I want to do. There's stuff that I feel like that platform allows you to do, and the superheroes, there's an itch that's doing superhero comics scratch. And I mean comics in particular. It's not so much the characters as they translate into other mediums, but it's superheroes as comic books are very unique, and so part of me has always wanted to write and draw a series of some sort. So maybe eventually, I'm definitely gonna do it as a creator-owned thing eventually, but as a Marvel book eventually, I would like to get there too, or superhero book.
That would be awesome. Yeah, it's interesting what you said about in comics particularly, and a lot of people, especially now, I don't know if maybe it's an intention when they create new superhero comics to have it be easily translated for screen, film, but for me, I can't actually get into any of the movies and television shows. I have tried. I'm just a comic person.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't like the Avengers. I tried to watch them. I fell asleep 3 times. I don't know what's wrong with me. I
enjoy some of the movies.
Yeah,
and I enjoy some of the shows, but I think that the thing that they're always going to be up against is movies can sort of compete because they can give you spectacle, right? They can give you size and scale, in a way that the comic might not be able to give you. But I don't know, there's something about the compression of imagination, 20 pages is where you have to really fill in the gaps yourself. TV is not necessarily designed to do that. TV is more or less we have to give you 10 episodes, or we have to give you a full season. And I think that's where these shows occasionally lose my interest.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much more, more to be said for, especially superhero comics, where the character development is often quite linear, compared to a lot of, more independent sorts of comics, which aren't focused around action and drama and stuff. But the character development in superhero comics versus film or television shows, I don't know, it just seems so much more, I don't even know what the word, it is more dramatic in a way, and maybe it is because you have to fill in the gaps, because the characters aren't outright saying exactly what they're thinking, and there's a lot of kind of guesswork there. But I don't know, for superhero comics in general, I always kind of preferred them as comics. I like my superheroes on paper. I don't know.
Well, it's also, there's visual metaphors too. When you have a comic, because the space is so condensed, you have to really pick your battles. You have to really make every panel mean something. And on television, a lot of times it's just pop a camera in front of an actor and let the other things that are in play do the work, like the performance or the dialogue or whatever. carry this scene. And I think comics and film are very different, but film, like when it is at its best, and film, this translates to television too. There's a lot of cinematic TV shows, but when they're at their best, they use every frame. Like they really use composition and visuals to tell a story, and comics are very reliant on that in a way that film and TV are not. So I think that's what I'm drawn to, because I'm an artist. So as a storyteller too.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of like, you've got your hands in both pools. So I always find that very interesting because there's actually not that many artists and writers out there that kind of, will work on that project and they're just solely doing the artwork, and then they're working on another project where they're just solely writing. I find a lot of the artists, writers are often doing both, and they're doing like their creator-owned kind of dealy, that sort of thing. So you are kind of unique in that way, where you can pull different jobs in that sense,
Well, not to brag, but I was one of the first ones. There was a big gap for a while there, and when I first started getting work doing both, I felt like I was one of the only ones, or maybe the only one for a while there, who was not already an established person. But now if you look around, like there's tons of people, like there's Chip Zdarsky and Becky Cloonan and Hope Larson and like, the list goes, Cameron Stewart, and like the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. Which is a good thing for comics because, I don't know, understanding both sides of the table don't always guarantee better results, trust me, but it definitely is an asset, and it's definitely a thing that leads to more experimentation, because when you know something intimately, like art intimately, sometimes you're a little more willing for it to take risks, or you're more able to empathize with an artist that wants to take a risk, and those risks may not always pan out, but I think that they all become like drops in the bucket in terms of comics, and one thing influences another, and people learn from other people's successes and other people's failures, and it's just a thing that I think comics needs as a part of the discussion,
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, I'm not going to keep you all evening or anything. But thank you so much for joining me and just, like, talking a bit. I mean, if you ever want to come on the show again, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, sure, anytime. Thank you for having me.
So, especially, I'd love to talk again when you can talk more about the upcoming Image comics and stuff in the future.
Yeah,
when they're about to launch.
Yeah, maybe we can even have the other guys talk so that you don't have to listen to me ramble the whole time.
Oh, well, that would be fantastic too. But not because we don't like your rambling or anything. But yeah, well, thank you so much and congratulations again.
Thank you.
And I'll ping you again in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.